Welcome back to Suns Valley Podcast, everybody. We've got a special guest, Erik Ruby from PHNX Sports in the house. Great to have you, man. Thank you for joining us.
Dude, super pumped. Really excited. I've been talking about it for a little bit, and I'm glad we could finally get it together.
We want to be respectful of your time, man, so let's just get straight into it. I think the first question I want to ask you, everybody's talking about Kevin Durant, and we will definitely talk about Kevin Durant. But I think more people are interested in, first things being first, Bradley Beal getting out of our faces. So with the news coming out the last couple of days that the Charlotte Hornets are interested in him for whatever reason, and I can believe it. I can lie to myself and gaslight myself into some reasons why they would want that. Do you see that Bradley Beal accepting a trade out of the Valley at all in the foreseeable future?
You know, I want to say yes. I really do. I want to gaslight myself. I think the reality is probably not. I would say nothing is impossible. But, you know, if you look at how things have been phrased from him, like, you know, you look at Gambo over the last couple of months, it was 100% he's off the team next year. That was what he was saying right when the season ended. And now it's 100% they want him off the team next year, but they're also asking coaches how they would use him in interviews. I don't know if the Charlotte stuff is legit. I looked into that and I couldn't find any confirmation on that side of things. Now, if any team's going to talk themselves into Bradley Beal in 2025, it is the Charlotte Hornets. So there's that. But I would say the reality is I'm preparing myself to see Bradley Beal in a Suns uniform next season, whether I like it or not. And the answer is I wouldn't like it.
I don't like that you said that. Okay.
Yeah. I'm not enjoying it.
I take what Gambo says pretty seriously. He seemed pretty serious. He said, come hell or high water. That led me to believe that we had some sort of power in the situation. Like, say he denies a trade everywhere, we can still say, okay, well then we're cut. But we can't even do that. He has to agree, apparently, to the buyout, which is just the most insane contract I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's not fun. And you'd need him to take less than what his value is to really unlock you and to wave and stretch and not have it like handcuff you. And you're turning a 2-year problem into a 5-year problem. I mean, think about it's 2029 and you can't add a free agent on the market because you're paying Bradley Beal $20 million to play with his kids. Like it's depressing. It's depressing.
If it's seeming like the Bradley Beal trade's not going to happen, which with the way you phrase it, like the Suns want him gone, but he has all the power in the situation, then that would lead me to believe he's still going to be a Sun in this upcoming season. How do you think that whole situation is going to play out? Do you think that Ott figures out a way to use him properly? Do you think it's still going to be drama from Bradley Beal? Do you still think he's going to be smiling because he holds all the cards? You know what I mean? Do you think it's going to happen? Or do you think they'll figure out a way to make it work if he ends up staying?
Ooh. Make it work? I guess it just really loosely depends on how you define make it work. Because do I think it'll be better? I do. We mentioned this on today's PHNX Suns because we dove into the Bradley Beal stuff on Monday as well, especially the Hornets side of things. And I remember saying this during the season and at the end of the season, this is not all Bradley Beal's fault, right? Now, a lot of it is laughing when Steph Curry hits a 3 over you and jumping up and down like, woohoo! Like that's your fault, right? To go out and to say you have all the cards and then be shocked when the fan base hates you, like that's your fault, right? But if your coach's coaching plan is to go to a player and tell him to be another player, that guy's not figuring out an actual system and game plan for you, right? I genuinely believe Mike Budenholzer might be the worst coach I've ever seen with my own 2 eyes from his time here in Phoenix. Bad from everything you saw on the court to everything that you would hear behind the scenes as far as how he operated, how he communicated with people, his lack of preparation, lack of game planning. All of that goes into why Bradley Beal was not in a good spot this past year. Now, the positional overlap is still going to be a problem. You're still going to have Devin Booker. I think Bradley Beal could work in maybe a super 6-man role that isn't bouncing back and forth. And Jordan Ott has been praised for being a little bit more cutting edge on the offensive side of things. So can it get better? I would say marginally. I floated out the idea of nobody wants to trade for Bradley Beal, A. Bradley Beal has a no trade clause. B, if you do play him this season, and let's say he averages 20 points per game on an team, but builds his value up because he's actually being used properly, come trade deadline time, could you find a team that wants him? Could you find a team that Bradley Beal wants to go to that's willing to offer a second round pick and some other salary to make it match? That might be something you have to look into. But overall, I think the end of the day, having Booker and Beal on the same team will never work the way that you thought it could 2 years ago.
Even with Kevin Durant's shots missing and having a vacuum for Bradley Beal to fill. I don't want to blame everything on Bud, although I do think he was a terrible, terrible coach.
Bro,
much worse than we
I
thought.
Blame everything on Bud.
You do?
I really do. I think I do. I'm with Erik here. I think him coming to Bradley Beal and saying, "Hey, you need to be like Drew Holiday," that was just not even the right way to approach it to begin with. I think that threw Bradley Beal off. And you know me, I've been the Bradley Beal apologist all season on SVP, and everybody is, just lit me a flame for it. But I sincerely do think like Bradley Beal is still a good serviceable player. I still think if used correctly, you can get him for 15, 20 a game and he be a good contributor to the team. Now, like Erik said, the overlap is going to be a problem because you can't play him at the point. He's going to be overlapping with Book, positional wise. But I still think that there's no way he just fell off a cliff. That's just my belief. I do think that this was the majority of his issues this year was on Coach Bud. That's just how I see it anyway.
Do they call you St. Louis Sundo? Is that homerism there?
We can.
No, they can't. But I do like Bradley Beal because he is local. But also, I did heel turn on him a little bit toward the end of the season, especially after the Steph Curry 3 smile on his face. That was like the straw for me. But at the end of the day, I still think he will be a decent, serviceable player. Now, do I think he's going to be all-star caliber, 28 points a game? No. Do I think that he can give you good minutes and good buckets especially if Kevin Durant is traded? And as Gabe said, we will be missing those shots. Yes, I do think so. And so that's my hope for Bradley Beal, especially if we don't trade him, that he just ends up being a good 32 minutes, 15 points a game, some assists, kind of fill a void there, especially as you're starting to tool around Booker.
I definitely think that there's value for Beal around the league. I don't think the reason why nobody wants to trade for him is because they think he's a negative on the court. And I was also, kind of labeled a Bradley Beal apologist throughout the season, especially I think back to like Christmas and early January, where I'm like, he's at least accepted his role well coming off of the bench. Like he had some good games. His defense was very up and down, but it wasn't really off par with what you were seeing out of Devin Booker, so you can't really crucify him for that, right? Mm-hmm. It's the $55 million that goes along with it, right? Like, You can see a serviceable player there, but thank you, CJ McCollum, the modern CBA and the second apron rules and everything, any team that looks to add Bradley Beal onto their team is going to have to take a significant step back somewhere else, and he's just not that caliber of player anymore, even if he can bring some value.
I had a straight up man crush on Bradley Beal for a long time. It was bad. So I feel you on being an apologist and having fans hate your guts because you don't want to get off of Bradley Beal. But I disagree with you guys on the Drew Holiday part of it. I think Bud was in the right because I guess it depends on. We would need to be a fly on the wall and hear how the conversation went down. But if the conversation went like this, hey, Brad, you saw what we did in Milwaukee. My system requires this to be successful. I need you to study up on what I had Drew Holiday doing in my offense, and I need you to attempt to do the things that he was doing. And then Bradley Beal says, do you know who I am? And then it breaks down materially from there. So I don't want to get too far into that, but I just, for the record. So let's move it along here, because I think we could talk about Bradley Beal for 45 straight minutes because he's that big of an issue. So now that the coaching search is over and the dust has settled, can you take me through your view of the process of hiring Jordan Ott and just how it played out and how you feel about it now that you've had some time?
Yeah, I feel relatively okay about it. The Michigan State stuff, which is what everybody gravitates to at first, I think it's completely valid to have concerns and to have worries about that. But I don't think that's Jordan Ott's fault. That's Brian Gregory and Matt Ishbia's fault, right? I think for who Jordan Ott is, he absolutely absolutely deserves to be an NBA head coach. He's been in contention for head coaching jobs before. He's cut his teeth beyond Michigan State, being a video coordinator with the Hawks, being an assistant coach for the Nets under 3 different head coaches, then going to LA, and then going to Cleveland with Kenny Atkinson and coaching one hell of a Cleveland squad along with Johnny Bryant as well. I think he's perfectly qualified to be the next head coach of the Phoenix Suns. I'm feeling relatively comfortable with him, in the unknown, right? I can't sit here and tell you he'll be a good head coach. I can't sit here and tell you he'll be a bad head coach. Reality is, we don't have any fucking idea how good of a coach Jordan Knott's going to be. The process was interesting. I didn't love how there was like a finalist, like a final 3, and then a final 4, and then a final 5, and then a final 6, and they kept getting added and added. That made it feel weird with, okay, who's leaking what? What are the purposes of this? Like, it just felt disjointed and disorganized. But I am glad they took their time, right? I'm glad that they thought this out, but I think it's all going to be discounted through, the public's eyes, because the first thing on Jordan Knott's resume is that he was a video coordinator with Michigan State while he was getting his master's there. But I'm much more upset about the general manager side of things and the Brian Gregory side of things than I am Jordan Knott. I'm excited to see what he can do, and I think he's earned it, honestly.
I think what he said is fair about, at least as far as him cutting his teeth, the path that he took to get here. All of those are valid reasons. Again, just with the fan base, it's just that Michigan State connection. And as he mentioned, with Brian Gregory, and just fans are not comfortable with how this has played out. It's, ever since Ishbia took over, each coach getting fired, and then, every bit by bit, there's a Michigan guy in the office, or a guy from Detroit in the office, or that works there, so on and so forth. And so we joke about this becoming the Phoenix Spartans or the Michigan State Suns or whatever, you know what I mean? But like, that's slowly becoming a reality, like as we look at it from the outside looking in. But again, I can't argue with what he said about his path and the credentials there. He has been in the NBA for a while. He has gone to other teams. He has sat under other good coaches. So he is qualified. Again, it's just that Michigan State connection that fans are not buying into, myself included. I'm with him though. I'm taking the wait and see approach, because again, we have no idea like what this is going to look like. We have no idea his coaching style. We've heard things, but it's truly a wait and see situation. But I'm with him. It's really the Brian Gregory aspect and the scouting department and that whole thing that I'm more so worried about than Jordan Knott.
Brian Gregory wouldn't get a job, let alone an interview, with any other franchise for his position. Jordan Knott's the complete opposite. It's not his fault, but also he wasn't my number 1 pick for head coach either. So, there is some middle ground there. I would have preferred Sam Cassell, Chris Quinn, Johnny Bryant. I'd say Ott was probably around 5 or 6 as far as my choices, but I think still a worthy candidate.
I'm hopeful that we will end up being pleasantly surprised. And we have such a low bar for him. How can he do a worse job than what we've seen? I mean, I think that it's nice. It's a nice change of pace to not go into this like with a marching band and a pep squad. Like, we got our guy, mission accomplished, George Bush style. Like, we don't know. And I think that's okay, because we've thought we've known before and been completely wrong.
Yeah, I was going to say, for the first time in 2 seasons, we kind of have to just wait and see. Like with Vogel, we were kind of excited. Like, Vogel, he's an experienced coach. He'll get it done. We saw how that worked out. And then we were excited about Bud. Hey, another experienced coach, championship coach the Bucks. He'll come here. He'll do well. We like the offensive system. And we were kind of fooled for the first, 12 games of the season. We thought we were going to be world beaters. And then, this time around, we definitely don't have that fanfare of like waving the banner with high expectations. We can definitely watch and see how this works out. Again, just when you look back, just 4 years ago, that's still depressing that you were just in the NBA finals with Monty Williams, and now look where you are. But such is life. So deal with it.
It could be worse than Michigan State. We could have a coach from, no offense, Ball State, and a GM from Ball State, and an owner from Ball State, which is not as good as Michigan State. Michigan State's kind of the cream of the crop as far as college basketball goes.
That's fair enough. But here's my issue is, and again, my worry is what you said, in one of our videos, is what if somebody else hires a Johnny Bryant or somebody else, and then that coach is just killing it, and then we're stuck with Jordan Knott and he's not doing so well. You know what I mean? Like, that's the other side of the thing where it's like, did we really, my thing is, did we actually do the interview process justice, or was just Johnny or Jordan Knott going to be the choice for them, and they just sort of went through the process and had all these interviews, and they're like, well, here's our guy right here. Sorry. That's my worry is what they actually did.
Let's get to the meat and potatoes of this. Let's talk about the friendliest, most cordial man on Twitter, Kevin Durant. So recently we've had the Spurs just take over as the number one destination. Today, reports coming out and Gambo's confirming he thinks it's the Spurs. I think it's the Spurs as well. It just feels that way. I need to be honest with you, man. I was watching you guys live earlier, and this is no shade to anyone that feels this way, but with a first-time GM, I do not see the Suns getting what people seem to think they're going to get for Kevin Durant. I understand that Kevin Durant is still playing God mode basketball at 35, 36 years old. I get that, but it seems like fans of other teams have no concept of how he's playing. They're equating the Suns' record and failure to, well, Kevin Durant must not be that guy, when in fact, he is that guy on the court. I guess what I'm asking is, what's the top package you see the Suns actually getting in return from the Spurs or any team if you feel like it's going to be a different team?
I feel the same way with the Spurs as everybody else does. Where there's smoke, there's sometimes fire. Now, I still think Houston could be on the table. I think Minnesota could still be on the table. I think the Knicks are going to try to take a big swing as well. As far as Kevin Durant trade packages go, with the new GM, you can look at it a couple different ways. I'm not super confident in him, but also if there's a pretty easy first task, it's, hey, this guy's Kevin Durant, give me everything you have. Right? Like, it's a pretty easy starting point to be like, do I need to make a case for who Kevin Durant is? He will tell you that you know who he is, right? So there is a chance that I feel like you get this top of the line package that, I don't personally believe is the most likely thing for you to get, but I think that there's a chance. People overpay, teams get desperate. Now, is it the Spurs? Probably not, but I think there's a very slight reality, like 0.1%, where you could walk away with the number 2 pick. Realistically, you're looking at Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Harrison Barnes maybe, and the 14th pick, and maybe some future draft compensation. To me, I don't like Vassell's fit next to Devin Booker. I think there's too much overlap there, personally. I like Vassell as a player in a vacuum, but I don't love the main piece coming back for KD being a shooting guard. So I would like to have that package maybe be rerouted to a third team for a more consolidated, maybe a better player, maybe a higher pick, whatever it might be. Realistically, that's what you're looking like. But because it's Kevin Durant, I do think that some top of the line returns are still on the table, especially because Giannis seems like he's going to be off of it.
That's my thing with the Spurs. Like, I just looking at the salaries, like literally the only way it's going to match is if those 3 players that you mentioned are involved. And then, it's just, to me, that just seems like such a huge talent overhaul for one player in Kevin Durant. Now, I mean, I guess they're going all in, but that's just my thing is like, man, Barnes, Johnson, Vassell. Barnes, I can see he's a veteran player, but the other 2 guys are younger, and it seems to be more building blocks for them to go with Wemby. For me, it's just tough seeing them actually doing that. But I mean, again, you mentioned the third team, but for me, I know, like, if there's smoke, when you said if there's smoke, there's fire. I just don't see the Spurs being that team. That's just a lot of talent for them to haul away for Kevin Durant.
Yeah, but I mean, it's Kevin Durant too, and I mentioned this on the show that Gabe was talking about, where they got a little taste of what mortality looks like with Wemby. Obviously, a freak injury there, and you hope everything is okay. You want to see a guy who has the potential to be a number 1 player in this league play, right? That being said, I think you see just how fickle these championship windows are, just how fickle some big man's careers are. And you think to yourself, like, I love Vassell as a player, right? I don't love his fit in Phoenix. I like him as a piece. Keldon Johnson, I feel like he was ascending and he's flattened out a little bit. Not the same peak that you were maybe expecting out of him. And Harrison Barnes is Harrison Barnes, right? To me, if I'm San Antonio, and I'm saying this not as somebody who wants a great return for KD, if I'm San Antonio, I'm pulling the trigger on that deal. You keep Stephon Castle, reigning rookie of the year. You keep the number 2 pick that you can either trade for other building blocks, or you could draft another guard in Dylan Harper or Ace Bailey if you want him to learn from KD, right? You're keeping Wemby and you're keeping KD, right? Who's the perfect fit at the 4 alongside Wemby. I think that instantly vaults them into top 4 status in the West, with De'Aaron Fox there as well. I think that's a home run for the Spurs I think that's a buy low package for Kevin Durant, to be completely honest. Like, it takes money to make money. And I think that's good money for the Spurs to do that. I don't think that they're trading any top tier prospect or pick in the league for who is still a top 15, top 10 player when he's on. And Kevin Durant, to me, it feels like a home run for the Spurs, but I get what you're saying.
I wasn't looking at like the draft pick aspect and then other teams. I was just looking at just salary match. And it's like, man, that's a lot of deals to get rid of for one player.
Yeah,
but
I mean, when you put it that way, $55 million is a lot.
Absolutely makes sense. Yeah.
If I'm Brian Gregory, I'm keeping Harrison Barnes out of this, especially if I'm more than likely not getting the second pick. Say what you will, and this could be wrong now that Giannis has bowed out of free agency. I don't think we get the 14th pick. This is a team that does not rush into anything. They are more than happy to tank season after season after season so that they can try to recreate that dynasty that they had before. That's their goal. They don't even necessarily care about winning because they're sitting on a treasure trove of championships. They're not like us, okay? We have been rushing and rushing and rushing because we're so desperate. They're like, I'm good. I got all the time in the world. I don't have to rush because we are 5-time, 6-time championships, whatever it is at this point, 10-time championships. I can see them not giving up any picks, and so I'm going after Jeremy Sohan. I want Sohan. Here's why. Because he and Keldon fit the alignment timeline. Sohan's not that great on offense, but he is a glue guy. He's very good on defense and rebounding, and that's the type of player. And then I want to flip Vassell. I agree with you. Vassell on top of Booker in the lineup, that's not going to work. I'm done trying to force Booker into being a point guard. Point Book, I think, isn't where he's best. He's good. He's not Booker when he's at point. So I think you try to flip Vassell. But am I crazy for thinking that they don't even have to come off of a pick if they give us Sohan, Johnson, and Vassell for a 36-year-old Durant?
I'm not touching any deal that doesn't involve a pick. I can't. There's no home run aspect to that deal if I'm Phoenix. I think you can get a better deal from another team. I get what you're saying from San Antonio's perspective. Maybe they aren't as desperate, right? Maybe the Wemby stuff doesn't get them as much because they also have the 2 pick in this year's draft, and they have the 4 pick in last year's draft, and they have other picks that they've gotten in trades, like when they traded Derek White and when they traded DeJounte Murray, right? If I'm Phoenix, and the best that you're giving me are like who the top tier player, even if you repackage Vassell, right? It's Vassell in that. I think Vassell's better than Sohan. Top 70 player in the league, top 50 player in the league, maybe on a good day, for a borderline top 10 guy who's gonna be in the Hall of Fame, walking in backwards on 1 foot. Like, I can't do that if I'm the Suns. I just think that you can find some sort of value elsewhere. Maybe KD's value is lower than I think it is, but I don't think it's no draft picks, especially no 14th pick low.
I think I need to specify, I do believe that as we get closer, KD's camp will put it out there that he wants San Antonio #1, and I do think he's going to cut into our negotiating value a little bit.
I think that's possible for sure. That's like worst case scenario for the Suns, and it's kind of what happened with when he went to Phoenix, right? He's like, I want to go to Phoenix. If I'm Phoenix at that point, and you're just giving me Vassell, Keldon, Sohan for KD, I'm saying, all right, I'm not gonna trade him. I'm just gonna keep him for a year. At that point, I don't know if I could do that, and maybe that's the wrong choice. Maybe that's me being stubborn. I don't know if I could do that.
Or you send him to one of the other teams that's giving you a better offer that does involve picks.
I mean, KD's going to hoop, right? Like that's what the best thing about KD is he is going to hoop no matter what. You send him to Minnesota, send him to Charlotte, send him to Timbuktu, send him to Alaska. It doesn't matter. He's going to show up. He's going to play basketball at 100%. He's not going to sit out. He's not going to waste a year of his career, especially when he missed an entire season because of injury, and where that puts him as far as all-time leader in points and rebounds and whatever it could be, right? All-star games. He ain't sitting, right? He's not sitting. So he basically said, I want to go to Phoenix, and Brooklyn didn't trade him to Phoenix unless they came off 10 total picks, half of those being first-round picks. Mikal, Cam, and Jay Crowder, right? So you can say you want to go one place all you want. At the end of the day, we still have you and you don't have a no trade clause. And I don't like looking at human beings as assets, but at the end of the day, we control your future. And if we aren't going to get what we want, you can come back and you can play basketball for us. And we know you're going to give it your all because you're Kevin Durant.
Great point.
I don't see them coming off Sohan just because of the control there. I think it's going to be a package of Vassell, Barnes, and Johnson just because of salaries and contract structure only. I think Sohan for you, I know you're asking for it, but I don't see them coming off of him just because of the control aspect. So there's always that. But I'm with Erik here. I think if you're the Suns, you have to go hardball on this one, and picks is the way for me. I don't think players is the way to go. I think I want some sort of assets for the future. That's the only way I'm moving KD.
If you were Brian Gregory and you could push the trade button or not push the trade button, would you personally go the route of trading Kevin Durant this offseason and getting the best you can, or would you just work on getting rid of Beal and try to run it back around a modified team with a coach that the players don't hate and a system that doesn't suck?
You know, if I'm Brian Gregory, one, I'm blessed to be in this position that I did not deserve. Two, I hate when people just go, well, it depends, but like, honestly, it depends, right? If what you're telling me is San Antonio is the best offer and there's no picks there, what I'm doing is I'm going to Kevin Durant and I'm saying this: sign an extension with us. We will not plan on keeping you for the entire extension. I believe that if you sign one now, you can be free to be traded in January or by the trade deadline. Sign an extension so that a team would be willing to part with more for you, so that we're willing to part with you. Come here, play basketball, man. Hoop with Devin Booker. We have a new head coach. We have a new identity. We have a new everything. Like, it's not going to be the same. And we'll go from there. I have been team trading for Kevin Durant was not the problem. It was what you did after that. It was how you built around Book and KD. We saw in the playoffs against the Nuggets when they took 2 games off the eventual champs, more games than any other team in that entire playoffs, when it was just Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, when Book was putting up MJ numbers on both sides of the ball and KD wasn't far off. We know that a nucleus of those two works. It's everything else around them that doesn't. And if you can find a way to get rid of Beal or to just utilize him in a smaller, better way, you nail the draft this year like you nailed the draft last year. You get good prospects, and Kevin Durant enjoys playing basketball for your head coach, which it was very clear he didn't last year. You can salvage something. Will you be a playoff team? I don't know. But if you can get KD to sign a 1+1, you can trade him at the trade deadline, and then you can move on from there with some more stuff coming back. That being said, if somebody walks up to me right now and offers a great package, if the number 2 pick is on the table, if the 10 pick, Jabari Smith, Tari Eason is on the table, you know, at that point, I think I'm doing it, because you just kind of got to get ready for the future. But I'm by no means anti-keeping KD. I wonder what the path forward is if they don't trade him.
What's that smug look for, Sundo?
Oh, you know how I feel about the Houston package. Jabari Smith, you know me, I'm a Jabari Smith stan. So yes, I absolutely would love that package. Yeah, so you know, it's just my route. I'm with him. That's all I'm gonna say.
Why don't you guys get your own show? How about you guys just join it together?
Man, we're on the okay. Reason, and that's why we are bums in our parents' basements.
Oh, stop.
Last question that I've got is, and this is a little bit more lighthearted, but what do you see for Ryan Dunn in his sophomore year? Any expectations?
Oh, Kawhi 2.0. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
Man,
let's go.
Listen, I am so excited to talk about Ryan Dunn. In fact, you know, we've spent so much time this offseason talking about KD and Beal and now Book with the extension. And, you know, we haven't had time to like appreciate what some of these young guys are bringing. Ryan Dunn is a certified starter next season. I don't care who's on the team. He's your starting small forward, point blank, period. You work around that. I'm excited to see him get consistent run for the entire season. That's a non-negotiable for me. I feel like it's a non-negotiable with Jordan Ott. And defensively, I expect him to compete for an all-defense team next year. Making it might be a long shot. I expect him to compete, and I expect him to be slightly more consistent from deep. Other than that, if we can see some continual development of his off-the-roll game, he's developed a floater there for a little bit before he was benched unceremoniously. You know, I expect him to be probably NBA nerds' favorite starting player that's not like widely acknowledged, because his on-off impacts will be great. The metrics will love him. The eye test will love him. I see him being one of the more fun players to watch in the NBA next year. And maybe that's just the bias, but I got very high expectations for that guy. The defensive instincts, he's shown that his shot's not too far off, and the rim pressure he puts on are all just beautiful fits next to Book. Put him next to a good offensive-minded coach and assistant coach, work and develop his shot. He's a bona fide starter next year, point blank period.
I absolutely love the fact that you brought up the point that he was unceremoniously benched, him and Oso and all the young guys for that fact. And so let me extend it to this. What's your expectations for a player like Oso? We on this channel love the Jalen Bridges signing. We thought that was a steal for
Agreed.
the undrafted free agency. And we also like Colin Gillespie. We thought he brought a lot. And so I think, at least in my opinion, I think developing those four players in particular, Dunn, Oso, Bridges, and Colin Gillespie are I'm not gonna say essential, but I think should be a focal point for this upcoming season. How do you feel about that young core right there?
You know, Jalen Bridges, watching some of his stuff in the G League, I think it's a little bit less D on the 3-and-D than we expected. I think that's part of the reason why he didn't get called up. Very excited for him, just like as an archetype. I don't know if he gets run this year. I'd like to see him get some, especially if this team is not going to be competing. I love Gillespie. Think they should have signed him to a contract before the end of the season. Really hope they don't lose him. Solid bench piece, bench guard that tries hard. You know, Oso has such clear limitations from a shooting perspective, from a size perspective. But God damn it, he's so smart. He's so smart. He's so athletic. You know, I think a backup 4-5 tweener who you throw him in there against small ball lineups that kind of gives you that spark of energy. You know, he should be in your rotation. I don't think anywhere near what you expect out of Ryan Dunn. But I think Oso will be a fun guy off the bench next year. He should get consistent minutes. Give me like 10 so minutes a game. Run him at the 4, run him at a backup 5, depending on the lineup. And just let him do this pace and space thing that really can unlock when you have a 4 or 5 that runs to the rim, that passes the ball, and that brings the energy. I'd say for Oso, if he can develop a little bit more of a post game, maybe a short floater game that's more consistent, he can work his way up from about 10 minutes per game. But definitely not as high as Dunn with those guys, but they all bring energy and they're all fun. I think they have a place on next year's team, whether they're competing or not.
I do have one more question, and this is not to do with the young guys, but this is about a player that we did acquire at the trade deadline, Nick Richards. How did you feel about his performance after we acquired him? How do you feel about his fit moving forward? You know, he's got 1 year left. I had high hopes for Nick Richards, you know, when we got him. I thought he played well. I also think that, you know, with Bud, he kind of had his, he just wasn't fit. But how do you feel about Nick Richards, you know, moving forward? Because that's one of my favorites anyway.
Yeah, you know, I think he's a great backup center. He's a relatively serviceable starting center. I think my expectations for him, much like you, they're high coming in. I think part of that is just you're so sick of watching Yusuf Nurkic play basketball that it just got so frustrating that the idea of an athletic center that can dunk was like, okay, this is our savior, right? Didn't end up being the savior. Obviously, Bud really screwed with him, man. I remember tweeting out like Nick Richards is on the bench with his hood up. He has a double-double in 15 minutes and hasn't touched the floor since, right? It's just so ridiculous how he was treated. You know, I liked he developed a little bit of a mid-range game near the end of the season. I thought that was a nice little pleasant surprise. I don't think you contend with Nick Richards as your starting center, but he's a very controllable deal. I believe he's on $5 million a year. He's a serviceable starter for a year you're not competing, and he's a great backup. Clear limitations for the guy, but for his contract and what he brings, I love it. Funny story. You know, I don't dream about sports that often, but for some reason, like a week and a half ago, I dreamt about Nick Richards taking like the Kevin Garnett midi over and over again, like foot on the line 3 basically, and just draining them. So I don't know if that's like premonition, but maybe Nick Richards turns into the Suns version of Kevin Garnett.
I hope it is. I don't know what it is. I really like Nick Richards. I hope he plays him. At least he plays himself into some sort of extension, and he's on the Suns for at least the next few years anyway. Not like a huge one, but
100% agree.
Erik Ruby, thank you for hanging out with us. Where can people find you and follow you?
Call Deion Sanders, not that hard to find. Head over to PHNX Sports on YouTube. We are live with a Suns show at 3 o'clock Arizona time every single weekday, plus breaking news pods. We went live early in the morning for when Jordan Ott got hired. We also are going to be going live after Jordan Ott's press conference tomorrow. You can just find PHNX Sports. I'm there. I do Suns coverage, ASU coverage, and as a channel, we cover all the local Valley sports from college to pro. You can follow me on socials at ERIKRUBY. Mostly just active on Twitter, not very active on Instagram. You can follow, of course, PHNX Suns, though, at PHNX_Suns, keeping you up to date with everything, but just happy and proud to be a part of the Suns community, psychos and sickos, as I call ourselves. And, I think that it's easier to get through times like these with your team when you've got community. So I love what you guys are doing over at SVP as you like that. I like that. Take that from Scott Van Pelt. Call it SVP. Screw you, Sports Center.
Yeah, we're bald too.
Take that. So yeah, I just love that. Love the Suns community. Love what you guys are doing and being a part of it. So if you are also a fan of growing the Suns community and crazy wild trades and deep basketball analysis and breakdowns, you can find all of that with PHNX Suns.
Thank you for hanging out, man. We'll see you guys for the next live stream. Until then, go Suns.